And we've got our energetic centers. I teach my students how to communicate with animals using their energetic superhighway, their chakra system, and communicating through their heart brain, communicating through their gut brain, communicating. We do body syncing, which is we connect body to body. We entrain to one another's body to receive information from animals. And all of those are different ways to have a conversation, but they all flow through this same internal wiring that I call the iOS, or the intuitive operating system. All the wiring is there. It's already set up within us. We've just never been taught to use it.
Hi, I'm April Hampton, and I designed my home-based dog sitting and daycare business so that I earn well over 6 figures in sales annually. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dog Sitter's House podcast. Thank you so much for coming back. I hope you're doing well. Today, I have another amazing guest who's going to go into the woo side of things, you could say, but this time she has some science to back it up and verify it's not just woo. So stay tuned. We are going to hear from Shannon Cutts. Shannon is an animal sensitive and intuitive, an animal communicator. She's a Reiki master for humans and pets. She deals with all sorts of modalities when it comes to communicating and helping pets and their owners as far as you can go, from chakras to crystals to scalar wave treatments. And if you don't know what that is, stay tuned. We'll dive in deep. So Shannon, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. How are you today?
I am doing fabulous. Thank you, April. We have spent some time bringing this podcast episode to life, and I'm grateful that we finally get to connect and make it happen. So
Yes,
thanks
me
for
too.
having me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time. So just to get on the path of, bring us up to speed of how you got here, can you tell me a little bit of your story? How did you become all of these woo things for
Oh
animals?
my goodness. Yes, yes. Okay, how much time do you have? No, seriously, I'll keep it short. So, when I was growing up, and I'll just share that I'm in my fifth decade of life. And when I was growing up, I really did regard any and all things intuitive or psychic. Psyche really just means of the soul. But I regarded all of those as special gifts, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like people that, pop out of the egg with a glorious voice that can win The Voice or American Idol or whatever's trending these days. And so when I became a pet parent, I figured the only way I could have access to animal communication was to hire communicators. And I
Right.
started hiring communicators for the same reason that many of my clients hire animal communicators, because there's something going on and nothing that I know of to try
Mm-hmm.
seems to be working.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that that continues to be the case, of course, with the telepathy tapes podcast's popularity. Now we are seeing a little bit more of a wide open door, a little bit more human curiosity, giving ourselves permission to explore, have some fun, to get curious about things. But that wasn't happening yet when I first started hiring communicators. And what was going on in my animal family was quite distressing. I had my soul bird, Pearl, a cockatiel, who had developed a very strange bleeding disorder.
Oh, wow.
And the way that things flow, and I'm sure your listeners can relate, book drops on your head or something random happens, you go to the library, you have a conversation with somebody, something pops up. I had gotten into reading animal-based books about different species, and I've always loved animals. And I came across a book by Dr. Temple Grandin. The book was called Thinking in Pictures, and it was her life as a high functioning autistic individual who developed a specialization working with commercial livestock facilities, reducing fear based triggers for these animals. And something she said in the book captured my imagination. She said, I'm able to do what I do because my brain is wired a little bit differently. She probably should have or could have said more dominantly towards the way that the animals think, which is thinking and feelings and pictures. And I
Mm,
thought, there's something to this. But I didn't know what she was talking about at the time. And I didn't realize that that's the precursor to animal communication.
mm,
In the meantime, I developed a popular blog called Love and Feathers around my daily life story with my soul bird, Pearl, who was with me for 24 years, and all of the different things that he was teaching me. And then I wrote a book about it called Love and Feathers: What a Palm Sized Parrot Has Taught Me About Life, Love, and Healthy Self Esteem. And the whole premise of the blog and the book, it was a little side job for me, kind of like a playtime. I had founded and was running an international charity for people recovering from eating disorders, and it was sucking the life force right out of me.
mm.
As those of you who are listening who are entrepreneurs know, that can happen. And I needed a little joy in my life. And so I launched this blog, not to make money, but just to have a place to play.
Yeah.
And the whole premise revolved around these so-called imaginary conversations I was having with Pearl and all of
Mm.
his animal friends, because I have a very full interspecies family, lots of different species. I have a turtle, I have a tortoise, we have a dachshund. So there's a lot going on in our family. And one day it occurred to me, after hiring an animal communicator yet again to talk with my family and having her say, Shannon, you can do this.
Mm.
It occurred to me, I thought, I wonder if these conversations that I'm having with Pearl, I wonder if his end is really so imaginary.
Mm.
And that opened the door. And then one morning I was meditating. I had just on the cusp of turning 50, and I've been meditating for 30 years by this point. So I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm trusting if a little voice drops in, gives me a little hint because I'm not getting it any other way. If you've
Right.
ever had that experience,
Yes.
I heard the words in my meditation: you are an animal sensitive and intuitive.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, that's fascinating, but I have no idea what it means. See, I still had that mindset
Yeah.
that I can't do this. This is something that you either have it or you don't.
Right.
Luckily, I had a really great intuitive coach as I was going through kind of a career dissolution and then a rebirth and lots of loss, lots of different dark night of the soul things going on. And I booked a session with her for my 50th birthday. And I told her about what I had heard. And she said, well, you're an animal communicator. That's a brilliant new career path for you. Fast forward 6 months, and I hung out a shingle and started offering sessions. Fast forward a few months after that, and some of my private clients started asking me if I taught. Spoiler alert, I had no intention of teaching at the time. And I had a wonderful entrepreneurship mentor, and she encouraged me to give it a try. She said,
Good.
just tell them you're going to make it up together as you go along based on what they are curious about. So I called it Animal Communication Adventure because I didn't know what we were going to do. And that's
Quite
the
the adventure.
flagship program today. So it really
Mm.
did evolve very intuitively and surprisingly organically.
Mm. Those are the best ways.
They
Yeah.
are. And in hindsight, which is such a gift and a tool when we're learning the intuitive arts, when we look back, and if any of your listeners can relate to this, you look back over your life and things that made no sense at the time, maybe things that you were like, why am I doing this? Or why am I in that relationship? Or why did I say yes to that? And then you look back later and you're like, oh, well, that gave me this skill or this insight or this deeper level of empathy that I now need and rely on.
Mhm.
But at the time, I was just annoyed. or
Mhm.
frustrated, or I felt like I was missing the boat.
Yeah, that's usually the case, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Those tend to be the arrows that if we're not taught that those are the arrows to help us grow or see things
Mhm.
differently and change our perspectives, then, you know, it's hard to see them. It can be hard to see them. And in retrospect, it's quite the treasure, isn't it?
It is.
Sounds like
And
you have
it
found that.
teaches us, I have found anyway, that it teaches us that we have a reliable inner compass.
Mhm.
It's actually reliable. And
Actually.
that feels, I know, it feels really good to realize that we can actually trust ourselves if we
Yeah.
know how to listen to the flow of energy and emotion. Emotion means energy and motion. So if we can learn to sense into the flow of the energy and motion within us, we can find our true north every time.
Mhm.
But we
Now,
need to know how to listen.
is that I was just gonna ask you, is that something you can explain? How does somebody do that?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's several different ways, and this is one of the core foundations of animal communication that I teach my students. And I actually base it off of my intuitive teacher, Sonia Choquette's traffic light system. This is so fun. And your listeners are going to love this. There are several different ways that our body can tell us what the right direction is. And the right direction is always the direction that feels best,
Mm,
that gives us, and we're not talking about a heady feeling like, well, that's going to give me more money or more power or more. It's a heart feeling of expansion, of excitement, of curiosity. For my students, we work from a foundation of noticing, wondering, getting curious, which is the
mhm.
same foundation that the famous inventor and artist Leonardo da Vinci gave to his painting students. As
Oh.
part of their training, he would send them out into a field all day or into the town square to people watch, to just notice strange things, to wonder, to get curious. And when we do this, we start reconnecting with our own somatic selves, with our nervous system.
Mhm.
So the traffic light system is very simple. Green is go, red is stop, and yellow is wait, more information is needed.
Okay.
And if you are at all familiar with muscle testing or applied kinesiology, our body will often give us tells about whether we're getting a red light, a green light, or a yellow light. Let's say somebody says, do you want to go to the park with me today with your dog and we'll have a play date? Well, that sounds like fun in theory. And you might get a heart opening. Yes, I would love to. We will spend some time together. Our dogs will play. They like each other. That sounds really fun. That's a green light. And
Mm,
you might even notice, based on which way your applied kinesiology works, for most of us, our body will lean forward. We
mhm,
tend to maintain or even enhance an open chest. We're feeling safe. We're feeling excited. We're eager to have an experience. Now, maybe this is somebody new. Maybe this is a dog you don't know. Maybe this is a human you don't know that well. And maybe you notice your body kind of flows back, or you think, gosh, I've got a busy day, or there's something that's just not right. And that's a no. Maybe
mhm,
your body leans back. Maybe you notice you've got a little bit of a protective feeling. You lean in, you cover your chest, your arms, maybe you turn to the side. There's all kinds of somatic cues that you can look for. Or maybe maybe you think, well, my dog loves your dog, but I don't like you. And that's your, or maybe you don't know that person that well. And you're just getting kind of a what I call a no until it's a yes vibe. I need
mm,
more information here before
mhm,
I say yes or no. For me, it's always a no until it's a yes, because I recognize that yellow light state. Our vibes are vibrations that
mhm,
emanate from the extension of our nervous system, that those of us who don't embrace the science behind the woo, so to speak, kind of what you opened up with, are a little slow to get on board with. But the truth is that the Heart Math Institute has measured the vibrational frequencies coming from our heart and our brain. Our brain is like a giant, very powerful electric circuit, and our heart is an enormous magnet.
Mm.
And the energy that extends beyond the exterior perimeter of our skin, about 3 feet out on all sides, up, down, around, and any way you can imagine, that's something that we call our auric field or our etheric field. And that is our subtle nervous system. That is how you know when somebody is behind you and is staring at you and you turn around and you're right.
Mm-hmm.
That is how, through quantum entanglement in the quantum field, that is how you know who is knocking at your front door or who is calling you on the phone or who just sent you a text or an email before you look.
Mm.
And now you might be listening going, well, I never guess right. Well, you know what? Neither do I. These are all pathways that we can develop, and we need to be paying attention. Most of the time when my phone rings, I'm not paying attention. But if
Right.
I stop and I think, I'm thinking, yeah, I thought about that person yesterday, and they pop up. So if you're thinking about somebody and you don't want to hear from them, that's the time to stop that line of thinking, because that sends a message. There's a really, really cool study by folks that speak regularly in 6 and 7 syllable words. But the premise of it is there are these two electrons named Alice and Bob. I'm not making this up. I'll send you a link so you can include it in the show
Okay.
notes. And there's this giant machine that they have created to do some kind of immense scientific study. And these two electrons, Alice and Bob, have what they call a quantum entanglement. They have a prior connection. And they've discovered that when they shoot these two, I hope it's electrons and not atoms. It might be atoms. I'm not a scientist, but I will send you the link to this
It's
study.
one of the
When they
two.
shoot these two, I think they were atoms, but they might be electrons, into their machine, they discover that what one does affects the other,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa, even
Mm-hmm.
though they are not touching, they are not close to one another. So
Mm-hmm.
this is where we're just starting to put a foundation underneath all of these theories like quantum mechanics, quantum entanglement. How does this work in practice?
Mm-hmm.
Once we've become entangled with another,
Mm-hmm.
we always have an impact, and we can control that. So that's a little bit along the lines of the theory that so many have tried to debunk, and now science is actually confirming that when a butterfly flaps on one side of the world, it causes a tsunami on the other. This is
Mm-hmm.
the theory of quantum entanglement, recognizing we don't understand how time works when we get into the subtler frequencies. We understand that dogs, cats, birds can see into and sense colors, frequencies that our human outward facing senses cannot detect. Just because we cannot detect them with our outer facing senses, our everyday ordinary senses, does not mean that they do not exist. We
Yes.
have animals living right alongside us on our planet right now who can go back to where they were born, even though they don't remember ever being there because they
Mm-hmm.
weren't there. I'm talking about monarch butterflies in this case. Their predecessors were there. An earlier life cycle of them was there.
Yeah.
Their parents, their grandparents were there.
Yes. Yes.
It's just mind boggling.
It
There's
is.
so much to learn and explore if only we're just a little open to it.
Yeah.
That's what I love on the telepathy tapes when the host, Kai Dickens, says, remember, being a true skeptic requires an open mind.
True.
It's not
So true.
exposing ourselves to any danger to get curious
Yeah. And I can
to
throw
look
in
at it.
a little bit of anecdotes, I guess you could say, because when I think about a customer that I haven't seen in a while, I think about that dog. I wonder how they're doing. Sure enough, almost a week or 2 weeks go by, usually no more than 2 weeks goes by, and they're contacting me to book another
Mhm.
visit, right? When I first started my business, it was very slow because 2020 hit right after a year after
Absolutely.
I started, it was slow. And so it really slowed down. And of course, you go into this, hold your breath, freak out moment. And I'm not going to make any money. I'm not going to be able to survive this. But I remembered, luckily, from some past training that I had, that the more I thought those thoughts, the more that I would go broke. Right. And the more
Yeah,
I just,
that's a tough one.
yeah. And the more I just believed. Now, I didn't just believe that it would work out, but I actively thought of ways that I could get creative in earning money. I could get creative in serving other people and their family with their dogs in order to bring in more income through that, dark time. And then just to, before I forget, I'm going to go back to something you said earlier. I love how you said, it's a no for you, it's a no until it's a yes, right?
Mhm.
That was perfectly stated because I remember a long time ago, before I even started my dog business, and I was listening to Brene Brown's books. I'm sure you're
Mhm.
familiar.
I
Yeah,
love,
and
well, she's a fellow Houstonian. So we're very
that's
proud of
true.
her.
Yes, she's a Houston. So she had this one part that really stuck with me one day because I was the yes person. I said yes to everything without thinking about it, without seeing how I felt about it. And then I'd always be that person afterwards going, oh, why did I say yes to that?
Mhm.
And forcing myself to go keep my commitments, right? And she said she had I think it was a necklace that she always wore with a ring on it or something. I could be wrong, but she basically made this pact with herself that anytime somebody asked her to do something, I think her example was something like the PTA mothers asked her to make brownies, right?
I
And
remember that story. Yes.
yeah, and she learned to just take a pause by touching the ring on her necklace and maybe turning it a few times, something to that effect. And that would help her gather her senses and what you're speaking of, notice what her body and her, what is the area around us called again?
The auric or
The
etheric
auric.
field.
Auric,
Yeah.
okay, so gave her a chance. She didn't use those words, but to figure out her
Sure.
auric or etheric field. And so I implemented that in my life with a ring on my finger, which is why I might be calling hers a ring on her necklace. I don't know. But I started turning my ring on my finger a couple of
Nice.
turns before giving an answer. And it was very interesting how often it became a maybe, or I'll get back to you on that, or even a no.
Mhm.
And it served me highly. The reason I bring this up is because for our listeners, when you're accepting boardings or daycare or any kind of service request and you're already fully booked, it's hard to say no. I get it because you're saying no to income. You're saying no to somebody whose pet you absolutely love and adore, and you worry about where they're going to go if they don't have you, right? And you might worry that they might find someone else, quote unquote, better in your mind and that they'll never come back. I urge you to take a page from Shannon's book here and take a minute to slow down and listen to your etheric field, right? And be able to say, "Let me get back to you," if you're not ready to say yes or no right then and there. So, okay. Thank you, Shannon. I wanted to insert that because everything you just said there really applies in the most minute ways in a pet sitting business, a dog boarding business, dog walking, and yet they make the biggest impacts that can be really detrimental to you and your health if you're always saying yes, for example, right? So it's very good to know that this field is here for us, isn't it?
Mhm. And
Yes.
you're feeling into the energy of that other human. and of their animal, and recognizing that when you say yes to you first, you're always serving others.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, unless you take a moment and you take a breath, and this is my other favorite technique, is we need to pop ourselves into parasympathetic before we can make these types of yes, no, or maybe decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll know if it's an automatic yes. You get so excited. Oh my goodness, my favorite pet, my favorite human. Of course. Boom. Or that feeling of heavy obligation and how am I going to fit this in? Well, there's always enough. There's always enough for all of us. And when we work from that premise, we can take a moment. And to do that, just taking a deep in breath. I'm not talking about one of those upper chest breaths. I'm talking about you make your diaphragm work for it. Your waistline needs to move. You need to want to unbutton your belt or your jeans or
Right.
whatever. And then you extend your exhale past the length of time that you inhaled.
Mm.
And the easy way to remember this is parasympathetic, by the way, is rest, digest, restore, and reconnect. So we're reconnecting first and foremost to self and to a feeling of safe and enoughness. Nobody ever takes the time to extend their exhale when they're running away from a saber-toothed tiger. So
Right.
we've got to be in parasympathetic before we can feel somatically, well, how is my body moving? Am I like leaning away from the phone or the Zoom? Am I trying to put as much distance? And we don't necessarily know exactly what those vibrations are stemming from. We don't know if maybe the chemistry is off between their animal and the animals you've already agreed to
Mm-hmm.
share space together.
Yeah.
We have no
Very.
idea. The point is to get to a place in your life where you trust that your vibes are always telling you what's best for everyone. And that takes us the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight, flight, freeze, tender, befriend. And the tender befriend is that yes person. I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
take care of everyone so they don't eat me, because our
Yes.
biology hasn't caught up yet with our technology.
Mm-hmm.
Everything to the sympathetic nervous system is still a drooling, hungry, saber-toothed tiger. So just understanding that about your neurochemistry
Mm-hmm.
can take you a long way through this process. Taking a couple of those deep breaths with the extended exhale puts you into parasympathetic, where everyone has what they need. It's enough for everyone. It takes you out of the good of the individual supersedes everything. And now we're looking for the good of the individual and the good of the whole. And that's
Mm.
actually the sweet spot. That's actually where everyone thrives. That's the work of Dr. John Nash, the brilliant mathematician from A Beautiful Mind.
Mm. Yeah.
He overturned 150 years of scientific thinking with that
Mm.
one theorem. He said, actually, the way that we work optimally is we seek the good of the individual and the good of the whole. So, is this really good for me to say yes?
Mm-hmm.
Is it good for them to have
Mm.
an overcrowded situation, to have an exhausted supervisor? That's
Right.
when accidents happen. That's when
Right.
good reviews and happy clients turn into bad reviews and blacklisting on
Right.
public and community websites. So we have to look a little further ahead and recognize, you know what? I hope they do find someone better.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
chances are good, based on how what I know of the service I provide and who I am in my heart, they probably won't, and they'll be back.
They'll be
So just
back. Yeah.
shifting that mindset. And every
Right.
entrepreneur has to do it. I
Yeah.
have to do it as a communicator. I mean, we're swinging from trees right now. We're popping out of the woodwork. I teach too. So I'm, training up future communicators who will compete with me. How
Yeah.
can I do that with an open heart? It's because I recognize that given the number of animals in this world who need help from we human animals,
Mm-hmm.
there's not a likelihood that we're ever going to run out of potential clients.
Mm-hmm.
Look
Yeah,
at
I
the
don't think so.
statistics. Look how many people are dealing with the post-COVID puppy issues
Mhm. Right,
that
exactly, yeah.
now need to find something for their latchkey dog to do during the day.
Yeah.
So moving from a scarcity mindset to there are plenty more amazing clients where that one came from. And
Mm.
I just need to continue to look at the holistic picture. How many dogs do I have? How much energy do I have? How much can I truly serve? And if I'm not serving myself first, that downward spiral can happen all too easily, just in the blink of an eye. We never want to put ourselves in that situation knowingly. We can
Mm-hmm.
learn, and often painfully, when we put ourselves in the situation unknowingly.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's a very common problem in this field, in
Mhm,
this industry.
mhm.
It's really hard to say no to the pets or the pet
Sure.
parents for sure. So
Well, I
this
mean,
is
they send those
great.
cute photos for goodness
Yeah.
sakes. It's
And
just
then yeah.
wildly unfair.
Right. They give you the sad puppy eyes. How dare you not take me?
Seriously. I mean, all they have to do is text you a picture of a puppy. And so we have to be mindful of that. What is truly best for this other soul, and they're
Absolutely.
human.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into some of the modalities that you do. We're going to take a turn here a little bit. So go through, I rattled a few off at the top,
Mhm.
but go through a few of them or some of your favorites and preface it with how do you help people? What do you, when you do animal communication sessions, how are you helping them? What are you helping them with?
Absolutely. So let's start right at the beginning. As I mentioned, most of the time when somebody reaches out to me, occasionally it's for just genuine curiosity, especially in the wake of the telepathy tapes, but most of the time it's for the same reason that I initially reached out to a communicator. It's a determined pet parent or animal guardian who has not found relief for their animal's issue going through all of the normal customary channels, and they're not willing to give up.
Hmm.
And that's the critical part.
Yeah.
What I've discovered, and you and I, when we were kind of chatting and planning this episode, I shared with you that when I asked the animals what the word pet means, I said,
Hmm.
why do we use that word? Because when I looked up the dictionary definition, it basically equated to a possession of little consequence. And I said, well, that doesn't work for me. That's not how I view my interspecies family. So, what does it mean to you? And immediately I heard the words partner, empathic friend, and teacher. What I
Mm.
have discovered is that even pet parents or animal guardians or animal owners, whatever term that you relate to, you can use your own terminology here and substitute that. But even the most closed minded, fearful, resistant, or socially conditioned against anything that even faintly has a scent of woo, even a little tiny tinge, will do just about anything for their beloved animal.
Hmm.
There's something about that awesome responsibility.
Yeah.
In a weird way, it even supersedes sometimes the responsibility we feel towards our fellow humans, even our own children, because at a certain point in time we can communicate with them verbally. We cannot
Yes.
communicate. We do not share the same physiognomy at a structural level, and we cannot ask and hear a verbal answer in the way that we have become accustomed to do with our human animals. We can learn to do it, and that is why so many pet parents come to me and they say, I just refuse to give up. The vet says everything is fine. The behaviorist says everything is fine. They've been checked out, their labs, etc. But I just feel there's something off. We've
Hmm.
tried everything, we've done everything, but there's still something wrong. That's the vibes, that's the entrainment, that's
Mm.
the entanglement that we share. If we're Alice and Bob, a person
Yes.
and their dog, then we get the inside track. So I always respect that and I trust that. And what I encourage my students to do, and what we all do as communicators, is we build our toolkit of our favorite tools. There's
Mm-hmm.
always something more to try. The most inspiring sessions for me are the ones where the pet parent arrives almost in tears, just so upset. I've tried everything, there's nothing left, and we always discover in the course of the communication, drawing from the insights of the pet directly, that there's something more that we can try. And often it's very boundary expanding for that pet parent. So they
Yes.
truly are our partners, empathic friends, and teachers. Well, have you ever heard of tapping? No. Have you ever tried Reiki? No. What about chakra balancing? Have you ever worked with crystals or color therapy? No. Do you think it might help my animal? I'm willing to try it. And often we find that there's something to this. So
Yes.
that's the premise that we're working from. Animal communication is the foundation. We want to have that direct conversation. We want to hear from the one who knows.
Mm-hmm.
Animal communication is nonverbal language. It's that 90% if you've ever taken a speech class. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
it's body language, but it's also the auric or etheric field.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the things that we never verbalize and yet are being said all the time. And interestingly, if you think back before the age of 2 or so, when you started to learn your first words and everyone got so excited and encouraged you to learn more, you were not without a mechanism to communicate with your caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
You can see new parents, especially new moms, go from, but it's crying again and I don't know why, just help, to they have a sixth sense. They just
Mm-hmm.
know she's hungry. He needs his diaper changed. She's got colic, whatever's going on. They just know because there's communication happening, but it's somatic. It's
Yes.
nonverbal, it's sensory, it's vibration based, it's energy in motion, emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So we're picking up where we left off at age 2, where we got off the nonverbal train and got on the verbal train and went speeding down the track. We're picking that back up. This is an inborn survival skill
Mm-hmm.
that you see in the wild every single day
Mm-hmm.
at desert oases around the world when the prey animals are trying to figure out if it's safe to drink or not.
Yes.
And the ones that are too old, too young, or simply not paying attention are the ones that end up plated and served
Yes.
that night.
Yes.
So that's where we start from. And just recognizing there's always efforts towards communication going on. It
Mm.
just takes a little retraining to understand how to tune back in.
Yeah.
So once we establish, first of all, that yes, I actually am tuned in with your animal. So that's the first part. Just getting to know the animal, taking them out for coffee before we ask about their digestion, that sort of thing. It's a nice thing to do. All of our pre-existing social skills come in very handy here.
Oh, that's
Then we can
good.
take a look. Yeah. Then we bring so many communication and conversation and relationship building skills to the table already. We're just adding back in this nonverbal part that
Yeah.
makes it
Interesting though
so
how
much fun on my. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's very interesting how even just the proper etiquette, social etiquette is applying here, it sounds like, which is really cool because when I have dog walkers that I'm training, I always tell them to let the dog smell the leash before they connect it to the dog out of respect, to let the dog know respectfully, hey, is this okay if I put this on you, right? And now you're saying that's the same
Yes.
thing when you're going to communicate with them, which I find fascinating. So, okay, go ahead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so once we have established A, that I really am connected in with their animal, and B, we've gotten some information because the animal always knows what their human wants to know about
Mm,
through their
okay.
emotion, through their mental pictures, through their vibration. Then we can take a look at charting a course forward, making a plan to create or to work towards a big picture vision. What is the best possible outcome here? What are we hoping for? Because at some level, what we're hoping for, there are already seeds being planted that on some level that is likely possible.
Mm,
What happens is we tend to get a little impatient.
hmm.
We humans, especially, we're steeped in a culture of 30-minute serial episodes and 2-hour movies where everything is wrapped up nice and neatly. And when we're rewiring a nervous system, or two sets of nervous systems in this case, we need to take a little bit more time, and we often need to employ a variety of tools. So the tools in my toolkit might not look exactly like the tools in another communicator's toolkit, but I venture to bet that they have the same basic purpose.
Hmm.
So we all gravitate towards certain tools. when I was a little child, I spent hours collecting tiny colored bits of glass and organizing them by color in a little toolbox. So obviously crystals is a shoo-in for me, right? Color therapy is a shoo-in for me. I love things like this. Colors have frequencies. Crystals have frequency. Crystals power our cell phones and our cell towers.
Yeah.
They absolutely affect us on a cellular level.
That's a great
Things
connection.
like hydration and diet. I spend a lot of time talking with my human
Mm.
clients about their animals' diet and hydration, about their
Mm-hmm.
lymphatic systems, about their sensory experiences of life, about massage and somatic release and nervous system rewiring, and all of those different modalities that you mentioned that I work with. Reiki energy, which is a very high vibration, very pure, very benevolent energy stream that promotes calm, enhances healing, increases wellness. Non-mechanical scalar wave is another type of energy technique that entrains every cell in the body to a single perfect cell, kind of like a little spark notes or a reminder, hey, this is what you're supposed to look like, and
Oh.
energetically entrains all the other cells to that
Mm.
one perfect cell. Chakra balancing, of course, we've got these energy centers that flow inward and outward. So we're constantly sending energy out, interacting with the world around us using our outer facing senses. That's the front aspect of our chakras. And we're constantly ingathering energy. And
Mm.
that's the mirror facing aspect of our chakras. And that's how the auric and etheric fields get created and how we exchange information, even when somebody's staring at us from behind,
Okay.
is what we're
Interesting.
putting out and what we're gathering in about our environment. And each chakra in the body, in fact, there's a scientific hypothesis on the table that, and some small amount of research evidence that our chakras, of course, we're talking about the root chakra, which is at the base of the tailbone, has the red color, the sacral, which is the orange color right below the belly button, the solar plexus, which is kind of a little bit above the belly button, and that's the yellow color. The heart chakra, which is traditionally the green color with the little pink center, that's right in the heart area. We've got the sky blue color at the throat. That's the throat chakra, the third eye chakra, which is the indigo color. And then we've got our crown chakra, which is the violet white. We also have a moon chakra, which is right at the base of our skull
Mm.
and connects to the pet's brachial chakra, which is there for those animals who have a soul agreement to keep close company with humans. Their brachial chakra gets activated, connects with our moon chakra, and that's how we build our energetic bond. That's
Oh,
how you can walk in and you can tell your dog's bark apart
yeah.
from all the others,
Really?
because you've built that relationship. So we work with these energetic centers because over time and through different experiences, especially traumatizing experiences, the chakra system, just like the fascia in our body, will try to compensate to keep us safe. And so let's say we've got a physical injury. Let's say you've hurt your knee. Well, the fascia around the soft tissue, the connective tissue, which is now being called the real largest organ in the physical body. I mean, I think the fascia and the skin are in competition with each other for that title, but the fascia might win out because there's so much of it in the interior,
Yeah.
and it will try to form almost like a gummy band-aid around
Mm-hmm.
that injury to stabilize the joint. Well, our
Mm-hmm.
chakra system does the same thing when we have an emotional trauma. And so
Okay.
that can cause some chakras to close down, to
Mm.
protect. It can cause others to flare, to open up. And so working with color calibrates the frequency, working with crystals calibrates the frequency, working with chakra balancing calibrates the frequency and realigns the entire energetic system.
Oh, wow.
And there are many more chakras, but those are the primary energetic
Yeah.
centers. And you'll notice they're in major meridians and around major organ systems. And they each course, they kind of have a responsibility
Yeah.
over certain parts of the body. So we're looking at, if somebody had a surgery when the spayed or neutered, if someone unfortunately was harmed in a particular area, if somebody got in a fight with someone else and sustained an injury, well, there's a physical component, there's a mental component, and there is an emotional component. There's also a the relational or soul level component. And
Mm.
so the different tools that I have are designed to work with different aspects. And often, I mean, I faint at the sight of my own blood, let alone others. So I'm not going to probably be working with the physical aspect. I'm not a trained in dog behavior or cat behavior, or I refer out. I have
Mm-hmm.
a Rolodex of trusted professionals that I refer out to. But so my job is when we're having this conversation and I'm receiving information and I'm kind of serving as an objective interspecies translator, if you will, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of helping my human client talk with their beloved pet and putting a plan in place. I bring some tools to the table. I refer out. I have basic training in aromatherapy, but typically refer out for
Mm-hmm.
anything more complicated than offer a little lavender if they seem car sick. I'm going to refer out. I'm going to refer out for diet, getting the dogs off the kibble and into a fresh whole food is medicine type diet. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
refer out for those sorts of things. I'm going to refer out for training, for developing new social skills, anything that requires uh, reprogramming, closing down an old neural pathway. The dog that I worked with this morning had a history of being rewarded for being aggressive.
Oh, wow.
That's what he was expected to do in his old family. And when he was relinquished, now he's landed in a beautiful new family where his job is to be cuddly puppy and love
Yes.
everyone. And he doesn't
Yeah.
accomplish this easily with all different types of people. And that's because he still has a very active groove, a neural groove from 5 years saying,
Yeah.
this is my job. This is why I was brought into the family in the first place. We got to shut that down, open a new neural pathway. So
Right.
with
Reprogram.
folks who don't trigger him and dogs that don't trigger him, the new neural pathway can be seen to be forming. But in triggering situations, so I'm going to refer out for that because
Mm-hmm.
we need to add some new social skills. So it's really important in my profession, in my line of work, to understand my boundaries, as you were sharing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Where does my skill set begin and end?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
see a lot of my role as let's put our heads together now that we have input from the most important individual in this relationship. We understand what's going on. We understand a little bit about why that neural pathway formed in the first place and what he feels like he needs. Well, let's create a plan and let's set some realistic kind of timestamp goal. Like, well, let's try this first. We'll start with diet and we'll do a Reiki session. I'll be doing a Reiki session on that dog later on, probably next week. And then I've given her some resources.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got steps, we've got plans in place. I did an EFT tapping session. If you're not familiar, tapping or emotional freedom technique was originally designed to treat PTSD treatment resistant returning combat veterans.
Okay.
Has a long history through traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, working with different meridians in the body, releasing
Mm-hmm.
stuck energy, allowing the subtle energy to flow again anytime we have any kind of a physical injury again. Got
Mm-hmm.
there's all these deeper levels and layers of kind of a ripple effect that happens throughout the body, and certain areas get frozen or stiff or stuck or reactive. So we're opening that back up. And then with tapping, it's a combination of mental, emotional, and physical or kinetic action all at the same time
Mm-hmm.
to affect a nervous system reset. So you can think of it kind of like turning your cell phone off for a minute and then powering it back up, downloading a little bit of new software, clearing the cache, clearing the cookies, downloading a little bit of new software. So occasionally I see rapid results, but most of the time this is just a little reset. We still have to install a whole bunch of other new software. and creates some additional neural pathways where the new behavior, desirable as it is, doesn't feel potentially scary or risky because it's in competition, or it's in a
Yeah.
combative relationship with the old neural
Yeah.
wiring.
And it's so unfamiliar to them,
Yeah,
right?
so unfamiliar.
Naturally, anything unfamiliar is always scary. Hmm.
Absolutely. And they're still building their bond. I mean, we look at 5 years in an old home with a very different vibe
Right.
versus 9 months in a
Right.
beautiful new home with a beautiful new guardian. But still, there's a and looking at someone who was born into a very traumatizing situation.
Mm.
So that foundational neurology. In fact, one of the things this particular dog told me was that he was in his second fear period again, because when he came to his new home, it was like a reset for him. And he's only a 9-month old puppy in his development, because he didn't get any of that
Oh,
proper
wow.
socialization, good nutrition, nothing.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like he has started his life over again.
Yeah. Yeah. And he has in a way. Yeah.
He really has.
There's something I might take you off track here, so forgive me, but there
I don't
is
know that we have
something.
one track.
I love
I'm
that
good with
answer.
exploring if you are.
Something keeps coming up in my mind. Uh, I've met with a couple of animal communicators for my own animals.
Yeah.
I've communicated with my soul dog who passed away myself many times, and you hear stories, I listen to stories, it's telepathy tapes, right?
Yeah,
And
it's great.
and you hear how an animal communicator can work with an animal and their human on, say, a medical issue, right? That the dog, let's say it's a dog, is having a medical issue of some sort, and the animal communicator might be able to reset that dog, right? Be able to tweak something within the dog's etheric field or their little, their programming or what have you, and then they get better. But my question always is, well, what is their diet? And it's fascinating to me that you're bringing up the diet because, I've had people say, like, well, we healed our dog of this, but they're still feeding it kibble. And yet, yet they had great results from it. So I keep coming back to that. That's my one but. Like, how does that get explained, right? Are there times where they can continue eating kibble, which is the equivalent of McDonald's for us every day? Can they keep eating McDonald's every day? And because of this spiritual work that some Reiki master like yourself or somebody did on them, that they're okay with that? I don't understand that. Can you help me with
Yep.
that?
I will endeavor to offer some insight. I don't know if it will help you. We'll find out.
Okay.
You know, and I cannot remember where the study was, but and I think they made a movie about it. The guy who ate the Big Mac
Yeah,
at
what was that?
McDonald's every
Yeah.
single day.
Yeah. That was
And
Super Size Me or
I think
something like that. Yeah.
that guy ate McDonald's and got really sick.
Right.
There's another guy that, and he even like
Oh.
wore a Big Mac t-shirt, and he
Oh.
ate it every single day. And I think he had some other unhealthy habits. He smoked or something. He was fine. And then we
Really?
have the salad eating marathon runner who, bless his soul, drops dead at 50 while
Right.
training for his next triathlon. So
Right.
there's a one of the many topics that fascinates me in my field of animal communication is how we choose our bodies. Each human animal, each non-human animal, we choose the body that we enter into. These are like our groovy, cool spacesuits, and they've got a lot of features we need here on 3D, gravity rich planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And they come with heritable DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And the only explanation that I have found for what you described thus far is some dogs are simply more resilient. And there's also an argument to be made, especially when we look at twins, identical twins, and we look at the environment that they're exposed to, and we see how identical twins, I blanking on the name of the study, it was a very, very large study that followed sets of identical twins and noticed when one twin would get, let's say, leukemia, or John Nash and his family was involved in one of these studies, if I'm remembering correctly, but he got schizophrenia and his older brother did not,
Mm,
because he was raised in a traumatizing environment and his older brother
mm,
was raised by a different mom. They were related through the father and did not experience trauma. So we can look at these situations where, all else being equal, you would think we've got the same DNA even.
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yet one of the pair will develop something, and we can often trace it back to an episode or more of trauma.
Mm,
And that could be physical trauma, it could be emotional trauma, recognizing that things get reorganized, exactly what we've been talking about. And in those cases, often the nutrient deficiency may rear up. Whereas in cases with an animal who is raised from birth in a peaceable environment, they, and factoring in the genetic component of the body they're inhabiting, they may just have enough resilience
mm,
that
mm-hmm.
they become like the canine equivalent of the Big Mac guy.
Okay.
So we don't know. There are no cookie cutter answers. Often what I see and what I've been seeing a lot over the last month is kibble fed dogs that are around 5 or 6 years old, and their guardians aren't on. Typically they're working with a conventional vet who's offered some kind of weight maintenance or so-called prescription diet, which we now know there's a big lawsuit that went on about that. There is no such thing as a prescription diet because there's no evidence that these diets do what they claim, so we can't
Oh,
actually say that they're prescriptive.
wow. I did not know that. That's good to
Yeah,
know.
you can
Good
only
to
get them
hear.
through veterinarians, but there's no script required to get them. They just
Right.
sell it to you at the checkout counter. So there's a big
Right.
lawsuit going on around that right now.
Okay.
And there's
Good.
some evidence that these diets actually even have detrimental impacts.
Yeah.
We go into the testing, we see there's diseased animal parts, there's euthanasia fluid, there's all kinds of fillers and toxins. Often they're rancid, can't trust the manufacturer, the distribution, or the sell by dates. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
So, in a situation where everything is less than ideal, does food then become vitally important as a source of medicine, of healing, of resilience for the physical organism? I believe it does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And often, what I will tell these pet parents is our dogs and our cats evolved side by side with us for millennia, basically eating our leftovers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If they were allowed to hunt for themselves in the wild, they would be getting an omnivorous diet. I
Mm-hmm.
know it looks like an obligate carnivore, but when we look at what their prey is eating, we see partially digested fruits, vegetables, and grains and grasses in their stomachs or their crops.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at a fresh whole food diet, and we're looking at a diet where most of the moisture they need comes from their prey. It comes
Mm-hmm.
from their food.
Mm-hmm.
We're not looking at, I encourage anyone who's feeding a kibble diet and wondering how it could be bad when your dog seems perfectly fine, or your cat, or whatever animal that you're feeding. I have pellets for my tortoise, and I've done this with them. Take one of those little kibble pellets, drop it in a cup of water, and wait to see how long it takes before it softens.
Oh.
That is how much moisture your dog's body has to devote just to breaking down their food to the point where
Wow.
it becomes digestible, where they can actually
Yeah.
absorb the nutrients. And then you wonder why we see these secondary issues like autoimmune or um, persistent allergies because there's not enough water to power the lymphatic system, which is your toxin waste
Disposal. Yeah.
removal and disposal system. The
Yes.
lymphatic system only works when we are sufficiently hydrated and we're moving. It doesn't
Yes.
have a pump. So if all of the water in your dog's body, whether they drink a lot of water or not, if it's all going just to soften the kibble,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have enough. And you might not see the ripple effect now, but if there's the procedure, there's something as simple as a tooth cleaning, and then we have the toxins, the carrier agents from the anesthetic that your dog's body needs to eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we're going to start to see some issues. So let's get
Okay.
them on a food as medicine diet, something
Mm-hmm.
that more closely resembles what they've eaten just fine for so many millennia. And that's a whole other conversation talking about vaccines and flea and tick products. And that's a really fun, but it's just almost kind of adopting, the Occam's razor, which is how I teach. That's the founding principle that I teach from. All else being equal, the simplest explanation tends to be the right one. That is a real working scientific principle that is applied in every research experiment going on right now
Mm-hmm. Yes.
to try to take bias and assumption out of the mix and
Mm-hmm.
stick to the facts.
Yes. So can I ask you, when you do your sessions and you speak with dogs, cats, any animals, do you often have them tell you that it's the food, that they need better food?
In various ways. I did have a dog last week who literally, if you've ever gone and looked at the government food plate, I understand that they're revamping that whole system, but the standard food plate graphic that you see, and he had been put on a veterinary so-called prescription diet that kind of looked like a lump of mashed potatoes, and he showed me vividly in pictures little bits of orange, which was the carrots and the yams that his mom used to feed him before he went on this diet, and a hunk of meat and green. Like, he was like, I am a gourmand and I want to eat delicious food. It's not always the diet. So that's where I'm kind of hedging a little bit and answering. Sometimes when the animal tells me they want a different diet, it's not the diet. It's they want to try more different things, or they just want to eat what their person is eating, or they're very treat centric. And so they're
Okay.
asking, an animal that loves to eat isn't going to pass up the opportunity to mention, hey, I have one dog whose mommy on special occasion makes him meatballs, like human grade meatballs. And he definitely asked for more of those
Oh,
during
I
our
bet.
session. Sometimes, of course, because of the way that I work in 30 or 60-minute increments, depending on what's on the table for conversation, it doesn't always come up.
Okay.
But if the animal doesn't tell me, I typically will ask
Oh, okay. Good.
because it's so important.
Yeah.
So we may be talking about something completely different, but typically I want to know, because when you think about our animals' lives and how much they willingly give up
Mm-hmm.
to live with us, it's mind-boggling to me when they told me partner, empathic friend, and teacher is the reason why we call them pets. That's the name they gave themselves
Wow.
for us to use.
Mm-hmm. So
That's a
self.
special soul contract. When you think of all of the animal species on this planet who really don't their paths don't intersect, it's a very small percentage of animals on this planet who have any kind of soul contract to keep company with our species, because
Mm-hmm.
they have to give up almost 100% of their agency. So of
Yes.
course their meals are going to be really important, something
Mm-hmm.
they look forward to, and especially with picky eaters,
Mm.
I want to explore that. We
Yeah,
don't always have time for it and it doesn't always come up,
sure.
but whenever possible, I like to make time for it
Mm.
because it's something that, I mean, we humans love to eat too. So it's easy to be empathic towards a dog that's just, I mean, every day the little lump comes, the little mashed potatoes, and he's like,
Yes.
oh. So whenever possible, either they're going to tell me or I'm going to ask.
Okay. Very
And
good.
I do
Love that.
spend a lot of time. Sometimes the human will just say, my dog's on a prescription diet because of this, that, and the other. And I preface it by saying, your veterinarian is not going to like me, but I just, are you willing to listen with an open mind?
Yeah.
And we kind of work our way. I'm very sensitive because I went through it with our dog, 7 years of kibble. Because, I mean, when
Mm.
my mom was young, they told her and her parents that smoking was good for you.
Right.
So the
Right.
people that I work with are the ones who successfully, people I work with successfully are the ones who, when they know better, they do better.
Yes.
And
Right.
that's where we work from. It's no sense in the guilt. Oh, I should have. I wish. Let's just
Yeah.
move forward.
Yeah.
The body is incredibly resilient if we give it
Absolutely.
half a chance.
Yeah. And when it comes to dogs, just my thoughts kind of went to this because often as a pet sitter or boarder, the animals are in a different situation. They're a little nervous. They don't know us. We haven't fully gained their trust. So they might not eat, right? They might skip a few meals. They might skip eating a couple of days, right? And I know I've had customers, other pet sitters, dog boarders, that they freak out about this. And the parents might be texting them, Is my dog eating?" And you want to be honest, you're like, "Well, no, not really." And and the parents are like, "Well, try to put some cheese on top of it." Or, try to entice it with some sort of topper, right? In my practice, I don't do that. I don't do that for the reason that I like to trust that the dog's instinct is on par, that they know when they should eat and when they shouldn't eat. Do you think that's a good idea?
Wow. I'm going to preface this by saying I am not an expert in your field and I do not do what you do.
Right.
And you are going to bring in the experiential data that I
Sure.
don't have based on, is this potentially okay? Is it maybe even helpful or protective?
Hmm.
I'm going to say from starter, if there's any kind of medical issue or
Hmm.
medical concern with blood sugar regulation, needing to take meds with food, anything like that. And of course, I don't know enough about some of the special situations that you might work with
Sure.
to comment intelligently on that. But if that would be the case, then I would say it might not be okay,
Right. Right. For sure.
just because, and I would imagine that there also, if you've got any kind of a group eating situation, I'm just pulling this from our
You
own
mean
docs
as in
feeding.
they all eat at
Let's
once?
say, yeah, let's say you've got a group of dogs that don't normally hang out and they're all getting snack time together, or they're all getting a meal together. Maybe they're overnighting. Maybe some of your
Yeah.
listeners have,
Yeah.
several different. I used
I think
to
normally what we tend to do is separate them though, right? So
okay,
there's no dog
okay.
fights over food. Yeah.
Right. So and that we had to do that with our dachshund because he'd like to eat his food and then eat everybody else's food too,
Right.
which also created a little bit of a weight management issue on the flip side when we'd go pick him up. So we don't necessarily want to do that, but just being sensitive to that.
Yeah.
Um, I would
Do you think,
say
go ahead.
trying to force a dog to eat
Hmm.
probably is going to backfire in terms of the trust that you're building with them. And
Mm.
my question with the toppers and the treats is, I mean, our dog he'll do anything for cheese. Anything. I think he would fly if he could, if only. And he especially likes the really crappy American slices. Those
Oh,
are just
the process.
delicious. Or Velveeta. Oh my goodness. It's like crack for canines.
Yes.
The thing is then we give him those kinds of things and then he gets pancreatitis.
Mm,
So a pet parent's anxiety about a skipped meal, as long as it doesn't turn into a trend of more than a couple days, I
mhm,
would think, okay, all right. I know I have a long history. I mentioned a little bit earlier, I was running a charity for people that recovered from eating disorders.
mhm.
And there's approximately 20% of the average human, canine, and over 100 other species that fall under the header of what we used to call high sensitivity, that we're now calling sensory processing sensitivity.
Okay.
These are animals of all species, our own included, who we're just wired a little differently. Our nervous systems work a little differently under potentially different or threatening or overly sensorily loud situations. So,
Stress.
crowds, strange
Mhm.
situations, bright lights, loud noises,
New environments, new dog, new human.
anything, they're gonna hang back. They're gonna shut down a little bit.
Mhm.
My eating disorder, I had anorexia type, and that is the type where we actually produce a little, many of us, I'm not going to generalize, but many of us produce a little too much serotonin naturally.
Oh,
And the
wow.
way that my brain is wired is I don't get the same reward.
Mm,
I don't get the same amount of dopamine when I eat that the average human gets.
mhm, mhm.
And because I produce a little too much serotonin and too much, you end up on the anxious side.
Okay.
Well, serotonin is manufactured when you eat. So if
Mm,
you stop eating, you lower your anxiety level naturally. I did not know this when I started
mm,
spiraling into my eating disorder. I was just going through a very traumatic experience. So,
sure.
as long as, and I preface all of that so that your listeners will understand that I do have some science behind what I'm about to say,
Okay.
I would tend to agree with you that
Okay.
ruling out any kind of medical
Yeah.
need, I would tend to agree that as long as we're not looking at more than a couple of days, I know when I'm under stress, and I know there are some animals that do the same thing. I am a highly sensitive person. I work
Mhm.
with a lot of highly sensitive pets. You can look it up. It's canine sensory processing sensitivity. It's
Mm,
common enough in canines that it's now got its own scientific
wow.
designation in the
Yeah, I believe
canine
it.
version of the Diagnostic Standards Manual, whatever that is.
I
So it's
believe it.
scientifically verified, and we can look at how this different wiring can impact us and how we self regulate our stress levels. And sometimes not eating temporarily puts us in a little bit of a alpha state, a little bit of a flow state,
Mhm.
because it lowers the serotonin production and can be
Okay.
a little bit calmer when we can't regulate any other way. I'm not exactly sure if that translates apples to apples across species boundaries,
Sure.
but I wouldn't be upset at myself for speculating.
Yes, yes, I won't be mad at you either. So,
Yeah.
and I look at it as the dog is in sympathetic mode, right? They're in this new environment.
Yes,
They might be a little
exactly.
stressed. They're in sympathetic mode. And the digestive
Exactly.
system doesn't work very well when you're in sympathetic
Exactly.
mode, right? So I want to
Exactly.
give them that chance to be able to go into rest and digest mode so that they can actually digest their food if they're going to eat, you know. So
Exactly.
yeah, okay, very
Exactly.
good. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
we are closing in on our hour, and I think that we've covered a lot. Um, there is one other topic, if you have a few minutes, I would
Yeah,
love to
sure.
make sure we cover because I thought it was pretty fascinating. You had mentioned before we started that telepathy is the vehicle. It is the vehicle.
Yes.
Uh, it's kind of the vehicle of how we speak to dogs and vice versa, would you say? Or elaborate on that for me, please.
Okay. So this is a common question. Is telepathy the same as intuitive animal communication? And I would say they're more like close relatives. So
Okay.
telepathy is the umbrella term that we use to describe all kinds of different ways that we can communicate with one another. It's a pathway, if you will, through which, and it flows through the gut brain. Now we know we've got three brains, right? Not one. We've got our head brain, we've got our heart brain, and we've got our gut brain. They each have their own nervous systems.
Mhm.
They all connect through the vagus nerve that runs mostly upwards. There's far more messages coming from the gut and the heart to the head than are passing downward.
Yes, agreed.
All other animal species flow with this. We're the only ones who fight it because, for some biological reason, we've developed these large and overactive prefrontal cortexes. So, in my animal communication student groups, we talk about what I call your IOS, your intuitive operating system.
Mm.
And what we learn, and you can verify this by going and reading Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor's book, My Stroke of Insight. She is a brain researcher whose brother had schizophrenia, and that prompted her to go into neurology so she could try to find out how to help him and others who were suffering from these very strange neurological divergent, I guess, diseases. And right in the middle of her early midlife career, she suffered an almost total left brain stroke that left her without basic motor function. She didn't know her name. She couldn't figure out where her body began or ended. A lot of the same types of sensory experiences that autistic individuals tend to experience. If you listen to the telepathy tapes, there's a lot of data there. But her right brain hemisphere was not involved. So she had total access to her right brain, which is extremely expansive, very connected, extremely sensory. So when we're talking about telepathy as a vehicle, we're talking about an ability to send and receive subtle sensory and interfacing in, or what we call intuitive information, messages back and forth. But that happens in all kinds of different ways. So we've got our interfacing senses. We've got our heart brain, which is our clear empathy, or what some call clear cognizance or clear sentience. We've got our gut, which is our clear cognizance. So we've got our clear feeling, our clear sensing, and our clear knowing. These are located in our heart, in our gut. And then we've got our eyes, ears, nose, mouth. We've got the inner sensory pathways coming through the right brain hemisphere. And we've got our energetic centers. I teach my students how to communicate with animals using their energetic superhighway, their chakra system, and communicating through their heart brain, communicating through their gut brain, communicating. We do body syncing, which is we connect body to body. We entrain to one another's body to receive information from animals. And all of those are different ways to have a conversation, but they all flow through this same internal wiring that I call the IOS, or the intuitive operating system. All the wiring is there. It's already set up within us. We've just never been taught to use it. So when we look at it that way, telepathy is like Wi-Fi or a smartphone. We can send and receive all kinds of different messages. We could text, we could WhatsApp, we could Zoom, we could send an email, we could make a phone call. These are all different ways that we can communicate, but it all requires the same connectivity. So I
Mm.
hope that clears it up a little bit. Does
Absolutely.
that help? Okay.
Perfect, perfect explanation. And so I would say this is why many dog boarders, pet sitters, dog walkers are probably, I would venture to say, drawn to working with animals is because they are more in tune intuitively to be able to be in tune with those animals, right? They might be more aware of it than they ever realized. And that could be what drew them to working with animals because animals are so good at that, right?
Well,
There's,
when you think about it, we have spent the last, I don't know, few hundred years slowly yet steadily divorcing ourselves from the lives that we lived in harmony with nature, in productive working partnerships with animals for
Hmm.
centuries. There
Yes.
is something in us that feels so alone. And
Yes.
COVID brought us face to face with ourselves and
Hmm.
proved to be a very uncomfortable experience for so many of us. And one of the few safe places where we could go was out into nature. That's the
Hmm.
time when many of us began inviting animals into our homes.
Yep. That's why everyone ran out to the shelters. Yep.
Yeah, the COVID puppies and the COVID kittens. And we ended up now with, well, we don't know how to integrate back into our regular daily lives post pandemic. And now we've got these, animal situations, kind of a lot of people who maybe had never had an animal before.
Oh,
But the
yes.
truth is that when we gravitate to animals, we gravitate to nature. And you see this almost universally. Even those who stay at the poshest high-rise resorts, nobody goes to the CPA office on their vacation. They want to go, we want to experience, we want to have experiences, we want to see the world, we want to explore, we want to be outside, we want to touch a tree or lie on the beach. And
Yep.
so that drive, some of us are just a little more awake to the need and the isolation, and I feel that those are the humans we tend to accept it a little more. I'm just so drawn to working. I also believe that there's something, and this is so fascinating, and maybe we can end here, but a friend of mine once said, every species knows something all the others don't. And I
Oh,
feel like there's a real soul call. I actually have a free tool on my website called Why You Pick Me. It talks about the unique soul level wisdom that each animal species, common pet companion animal species, has to offer us, and some of the maybe the soul lessons that we're seeking that come through those different animal species. And so I feel like when we have a call to work with a particular species in particular, like let's say dogs or cats or horses, or for me, it's always been parrots and turtles. I love all animals, and I've always had a diverse interspecies family. But I mean, I started begging for a parakeet when I was 7, and I was
wow.
determined. And when I turned 8, I got one because my parents couldn't take it anymore. So when we have that kind of a soul pull, there's always a soul lesson for us. And often once we
Yes.
learn that lesson, well, then we open up our lives to so many different animal species. But there's a reason. And so
Yeah.
always honoring that, recognizing those animals are choosing you. They're choosing you. You
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't feel the heart call if they hadn't already selected you. That's
Right.
a
Right.
big
That's your reason.
honor.
Yep. That's
That's
your
kind of
clue.
amazing.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Shannon. Let me tell you, or have you tell the audience, what can you do to help a pet sitter if they have pets that are possibly experiencing trauma, or they wonder if they are, if they can recognize that these animals in their care could use your help, or they could recommend you to the pet owners. Tell
Absolutely.
me how people can get a hold of you and what it is that they can get your services and get
Expect.
support. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
what can they
absolutely.
get help with?
So you can always find me at animallovelanguages.com. If you're on Instagram, I'm there at Animal Love Languages, or at Love and Feathers and Shells is my main account, and at Animal Love Languages on Facebook. And I work with humans who are bonded to their animals. And so this is really important when we're talking about a secondary relationship, like a pet sitter or a pet boarder, or a pet trainer, maybe, or social skills teacher. Um, you may feel like, oh, animal, your care could really benefit. And that's when we want to recommend me to that animal's human, versus if it's your own personal animal, because we want to make sure that when you receive information from the animal, you can then make good use of it. That's the goal. It's like it can feel very disempowering to realize, well, I have the inside track. This dog has opened up to me now, but I actually don't have any control over that. And I
Yeah.
want to avoid that for you. So there's always, of course, an opportunity to refer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other aspect of that, however, is let's teach you how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You can have those conversations. It gives
Mm-hmm.
you another tool in your toolkit. And for those of you who are listening to go and thinking to yourself, yeah, college wasn't fun for me, neither was primary and secondary school. I don't want to go through 8 more years. It's not like that. This tends to be quick. And typically, those who are drawn to it, if you're even the least bit intuitive curious, probably already doing it. Now I'm going to teach you how to do it on purpose
Yes.
in deliberate
Nice.
steps that you recognize and understand and can apply under varying degrees of challenging circumstances, right? It's one thing to do it when you're
Yeah.
zen calm in the privacy of your own home. And it's another thing with, when you've got a
Yeah.
howling pack around you or some kind of external stimuli that's unexpected. So teaching you to do it on purpose
Yeah.
and do it under varying circumstances. I have the full animal communication adventure to mastery, the course, the online self-paced program that I'm actually just rolling out next week. So it's really exciting. It's building
Oh,
on years and years of teaching in small groups, circles. Now it's like the fully organized brain dump from the mind and heart of a working professional animal communicator with a global client base. And I'm giving it to you in the form of this program. And there's a complement, which is the Animal Communication Adventure Practice Circle. And we meet 3 to 4 times a month live on Zoom for a couple hours at a time, and we practice.
oh,
The
very well.
animals are your real teachers. So that's what I would recommend. Absolutely. You can refer out to me, and I evaluate every single case
Okay.
individually. There are no cookie cutter solutions, even if I do find myself emphasizing certain fundamentals again and again. It's
Sure.
unique to every animal I talk with, and they're human and what's going on in their interspecies family and between them.
Mm-hmm.
And often the energy work is a component.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
Yeah.
certain form of animal communication that can happen during an energy session, but again, that's a little different. So there's a time and a place for each. And I
Mm-hmm.
may not recommend the same tools for each animal. And I do that very intuitively based on the conversation that I've had. So there's that
Okay.
aspect. And then there's let's get your intuition firing on all cylinders. Let's
Yeah.
bring you back into a state where it feels normal and natural to trust your vibes, to use your
That would,
traffic light system, and to give yourself that parasympathetic pause that we were talking about,
yeah.
not just for the animals over whom you might have temporary guardianship, but within your interspecies family and with your human relationships. Because one of the things that I've discovered about animal communication is it makes me a better human
Mm-hmm.
in a way that I haven't been able to access through any other means. And believe you me, I've tried. So,
Well, I can
right, we
only,
don't need, yeah.
yeah, I can only imagine. And I'm imagining if I had all these tools, if I practiced them, if I got better at them, and I had to introduce dogs or during my meet and greets, anytime I'm in those situations, then my skill set would just be enhanced, right? I would 10x my skill set being a better guide for the dogs because when I'm introducing dogs, I explain it as we're like a coach or we're a guide for the animals. We're picking up on the different cues, and if we notice one of them is really shy and anxious and frightened of this other dog, we might be able to step in and in a way non-verbally show that dog that we're going to keep them safe, that they can relax, that we have their back, right? Or
Absolutely.
different things that we can do. So maybe guide them to sniffing things so that they get stuck out of, or they can get unstuck from their fear
Mm-hmm.
mode and get into curiosity mode, right? And the more we are in tune with these animals when introducing them or when meeting them for the first time with their parents or whatever you want to call them,
Yep.
then that's just, you're just going to wow the socks off of people, and they're going to be so impressed with you and your services, they're never going to want to go anywhere else, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah. So how do people
Exactly.
get into, are people able to get into your next online course that you're opening up next week?
They will. They will be. All
And
you'll
they
have to
go
do
to
is so it will be,
animallovelanguages.com?
yeah, animallovelanguages.com, and there's a little button at the top that says programs. The practice circle is open right now for those who've had any prior experience.
Oh, okay.
We do need a foundational level of knowledge, whether it's with me or someone else. And the formal course, which has been over a year in the making,
Oh,
is just
exciting.
about to launch. So by the time this episode airs, it will be open.
Okay, yes,
If
true.
if the episode air date is a week out, it will be open.
Okay, okay, which it probably will. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
So
which you'll be relaunching it again if people miss it this time, I'm sure in the future, because I'm
oh,
sure it'll be
absolutely.
a
It
banger.
will
It'll,
it yeah, it will be available
okay, good. Very good.
after this week. So the easiest way to gain updates is that you'll see a little bar at the top that says join my weekly love letter community. You
Oh,
get
okay.
$25 off your first session with me, and you'll get the inside scoop when my podcast drops a new episode. You can look me up on Let's Talk to Animals, and you'll get the first notification of the new podcast episodes. Plus, you'll get all of the new free tools, and you'll get that discount on your first session, and you'll get notified. I give away free sessions every 6 months so that my senior students can practice, and
Oh,
you'll get
nice.
notification of any new perks, courses, etc., and special offers that nobody
Wow.
else gets. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's wonderful. It sounds like you have the whole kit and caboodle. So if you need anything animal communication wise, intuitive wise, speaking with anything, just I highly recommend you guys go to Shannon. She's the real deal. I can tell I've talked to many, and I can see a good one when I talk to one. So any last final words that you'd like to leave, words of wisdom with dog boarders, pet sitters, dog walkers that you
trust
can
your
think of?
instincts.
Oh,
Trust your instincts.
yeah.
Just begin tuning in. Just use that deep breath and that extended exhale. It doesn't have to be complicated. Your
Mm,
breath is your very best friend. There are countless science and research experiments that back that up, that go back to the breath. Go
mm,
back to your breath. There's something very mysterious and connecting.
mm,
When somebody around us is breathing deeply, fully, and easefully, everyone else can feel it. So trust yourself to stop for a moment and breathe
mm.
and notice what your body's doing. Notice what's going on in your gut or your heart,
I
and
love it.
just start to tune back in. This isn't something you have to take time for, carve out another hour in your day to do. This is something designed to be incorporated into your everyday, already ongoing life to make your life feel easier, lighter, and more fun.
Mm. Couldn't have said it better. I love it. Thank you very much, Shannon. I appreciate it. We appreciate your time with us, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Well, truly appreciate the invitation. It's been a joy to talk with you, and thank you.
You're welcome.